Welcome to Headstones and Microphones, where we use AI to step into the past through a researched, first-person simulation of history's most interesting people. I am your host, Calvin. While we've added some creative storytelling, our goal is to inspire your own study of these fascinating lives. Now, let's meet our guest. I am absolutely thrilled today. We are sitting down with a man whose work literally connects the world. For those who may somehow not know who you are, who are you?
Hello, Calvin. I am Alexander Graham Bell. Most people know me as the inventor of the telephone, though I always preferred to think of myself simply as a teacher of the deaf. My life was a long journey of trying to turn silence into sound.
A teacher first, I love that. Let's take it back to the very beginning. When and where were you born?
I was born on March 3, 1847. The setting was the beautiful Athens of the North, Edinburgh, Scotland.
And what was your given name at birth?
Interestingly, I was just Alexander Bell. No middle name at all.
Really? So there must be a story behind the Graham part of your name.
There certainly is. I had two brothers, Melville and Edward, and they both had middle names. I felt quite left out. On my 11th birthday, my father gave me the greatest gift I could ask for, the middle name Graham. It was in honor of Alexander Graham, a former student of my father's who had become a dear family friend. From that day on, I was Alexander Graham Bell.
That's a great birthday present. What was your hometown of Edinburgh like growing up?
Oh, it was a city of intellect and history. We lived in a world of sound and speech. My father and grandfather were both elocutionists, experts in how people speak. Our house was always filled with the study of the human voice. It was a rigorous environment, but also one that sparked a deep curiosity about the world around me.
It sounds like a very focused household. What was your family life like overall?
It was deeply connected to the challenges of hearing. My mother, Eliza Grace Simmons Bell, began to lose her hearing when I was about 12. To communicate with her, I learned to speak in low, sonorous tones directly against her forehead so she could feel the vibrations of my voice. This experience, more than anything else, shaped my heart and my career. My father was a demanding man, but he taught me the mechanics of speech through his visible speech system.
That explains so much about your later inventions. What kind of kid were you?
I was a bit of a dreamer, I must admit. I loved music and art, but I was also a bit of a tinkerer. I wasn't always the best student in the traditional sense. I found the standard curriculum a bit dull, but if a problem interested me, I would obsess over it until I found a solution.
What were your biggest fears growing up?
My greatest fear was the White Plague, tuberculosis. It was a terrifying reality in the 19th century. Sadly, it took both of my brothers from us. That fear eventually led my family to leave Scotland for the healthier air of Canada when I was a young man.
I'm so sorry to hear that. As a child, what did you dream of becoming?
I wanted to be a musician. I was quite a talented pianist for a time, but as I grew older and saw the work my father was doing, I realized my true calling was in the science of sound and helping the deaf see speech.
What were some of your favorite activities in school?
I loved botany and biology. I used to collect all sorts of specimens, but my favorite activity wasn't really a school subject. It was music. I could spend hours at the piano.
And what was your first job?
My very first invention job happened when I was only 12. My friend's father owned a flour mill, and the process of dehusking the wheat was very slow. I built a machine with rotating paddles and nail brushes that did the job much faster. My first professional job, though, was teaching elocution and music at Weston House Academy in Elgin.
A 12-year-old inventor. Was there a moment where you realized you were different from everyone else?
I suppose it was when I realized I could hear things differently. I could see the physics of sound where others just heard noise. When I began experimenting with harmonic telegraphs, I realized I was looking for a way to transmit the human voice while everyone else was just trying to send dots and dashes faster.
That's a huge shift in perspective. What's a decision that changed everything for you, but felt small at the time?
Moving to Boston in 1871, I went there just to give a series of lectures on my father's visible speech system. It felt like a temporary career move. But it was there that I met my future wife, Mabel Hubbard, and found the financial backers who would eventually support the development of the telephone.
What was your biggest break?
The 1876 Centennial Exposition in Philadelphia. I had the telephone set up, but people were largely ignoring it. Then Dom Pedro II, the Emperor of Brazil, walked by. He knew me from my work with the deaf. He picked up the receiver, I spoke into the other end, and he exclaimed, "My God, it talks!" That moment changed everything.
Talk about a high-profile endorsement. What were your biggest struggles before that success?
Money was always a struggle. I was often torn between my passion for teaching the deaf and the grueling hours required for my electrical experiments. I was frequently exhausted and suffered from severe headaches due to the stress.
Did you ever consider quitting?
Never the work itself, though I did get frustrated with the legal battles. There were so many people claiming they had invented the telephone first. I spent years in and out of courtrooms defending my patents. That was exhausting, but the drive to discover something new kept me going.
Are there any specific daily habits or routines that you feel were essential to your success?
I was a night owl. I found that I did my best thinking in the quiet of the night, often working until 3 or 4 in the morning. I also found that long walks in nature helped clear my mind and allowed new ideas to surface.
What job would you have had if fame never happened?
I would have remained a teacher for the deaf. That was my true passion. Fame was a byproduct of my curiosity, but helping a student like Helen Keller communicate, that was my greatest reward.
What was your life like before fame?
It was quiet and academic. I was a young immigrant trying to make a name for myself in Boston, living in boarding houses and spending every spare penny on wires, batteries, and magnets.
How did relationships change after success?
Success allowed me to provide a wonderful life for my wife, Mabel, and our daughters. However, it also meant I was often pulled away by business and legal obligations. I had to be careful to protect my private time with my family at our home, Ben Bray, in Nova Scotia.
Did fame bring happiness?
Happiness came from my family and my work, not the fame itself. In fact, I found the telephone to be a bit of an intrusion. I eventually refused to have one in my personal study because it wouldn't stop ringing while I was trying to work on other things.
That is irony at its finest. What was the downside of becoming famous?
The constant legal challenges and the public's expectation that I would only ever be the quote-unquote telephone man. I had so many other interests: aviation, hydrofoils, sheep breeding, but the world always wanted to talk about the telephone.
What misconceptions did people have about you?
Some people thought I was purely a businessman or a cold scientist. I was a very sentimental man who loved poetry and music. And again, many didn't realize that my work with the deaf was always my primary focus.
What was your darkest moment?
Losing my 2 infant sons, Edward and Robert. No amount of scientific success can heal the heart of a father who loses his children. It was a profound sorrow that Mabel and I carried together.
That is truly heartbreaking. What past regrets did you carry that you spoke about?
I sometimes regretted that the telephone became such a dominant force in my life that it overshadowed my other scientific pursuits. I also felt I could have done even more for the deaf community.
What's something people misunderstood about your life?
People often think the telephone was an accidental discovery. It wasn't. It was the result of years of studying the anatomy of the ear and the physics of vibration. It was a very deliberate pursuit of seeing sound.
Tell me about a time when everything went wrong and how did you handle it?
When President James Garfield was shot in 1881, the doctors couldn't find the bullet. I spent days frantically trying to invent a metal detector to save him. It worked in tests, but in the White House, it kept malfunctioning. We later realized the metal bed springs beneath the president were interfering with the signal. He passed away, and I felt a deep sense of failure that my invention couldn't save him.
You did everything you could. Did fame and fortune change your life?
It gave me the freedom to pursue whatever curious thought popped into my head. It allowed me to fund the journal Science and to support the National Geographic Society. It changed my circumstances, but I hope it didn't change my character.
What personal battles were you fighting privately?
I struggled with my health, headaches, and bouts of exhaustion. I also felt a great weight of responsibility to use my resources for the benefit of mankind, which could be quite a heavy burden to carry.
Who had the biggest influence on your life?
My wife, Mabel. She was deaf from the age of 5, and her intelligence, grace, and support were the bedrock of my life. And of course, my father, whose work and speech laid the foundation for everything I achieved.
What was life like in your final years?
They were some of my happiest. I spent much of my time at Ben Bray in Cape Breton. I was fascinated by flight and worked extensively on tetrahedral kites and hydrofoil boats. I was always looking at the horizon, wondering what was next.
What were you working on in your career before you passed away?
I was still very much involved with the Aerial Experiment Association and perfecting my hydrofoil, the HD4, which actually set a world marine speed record. I never stopped being curious.
When and where did you pass away?
I passed away on August 2nd, 1922, at my beloved home, Ben Bray, in Nova Scotia, Canada.
What happened?
It was complications from diabetes. I was 75 years old, and I was surrounded by my family. During my funeral, every telephone in North America was silenced for 1 minute in my honor. It was a beautiful, quiet tribute.
That is a stunning tribute. What's a random fact about you most people have never heard?
I invented a, quote, vacuum jacket to help with breathing, which was essentially a precursor to the iron lung. I also experimented with teaching my dog Truve how to speak by manipulating his jowls.
You taught a dog to speak. That's incredible. What's the craziest rumor ever told about you?
Some people claimed I stole the idea for the telephone from Elisha Gray. We both arrived at the patent office on the same day, but my record showed years of prior work. It was a controversy that followed me for a long time, but the courts eventually cleared it up.
What was your most unique habit?
I loved to go swimming in the middle of the night. I found the cold water and the moonlight very invigorating for my thoughts.
What was your favorite food?
I had a great fondness for oatmeal, a true Scotsman to the end.
Did you have a favorite restaurant?
Not particularly. I much preferred the home-cooked meals prepared by my family at Ben Bray.
What was your favorite book?
I was a great admirer of the works of William Shakespeare. The rhythm and sound of his language were fascinating to me.
Did you have any known rivalries?
Beyond the patent battles with Elisha Gray and Western Union, I wouldn't call them rivalries so much as scientific competitions. I had a great deal of respect for Thomas Edison, even though we were often working on similar problems.
Tell us a story nobody talks about.
When I was a boy, I made a speaking machine with my brother. We used a skull, some gutta percha, and a bellows. We managed to make it say the word mama so clearly that it startled the neighbors. We thought it was the most hilarious thing in the world.
What's your funniest behind-the-scenes moment?
Early on, during a demonstration of the telephone, a wire got crossed or something failed, and I ended up shouting, "Mr. Watson, come here, I want to see you," into the transmitter. It wasn't meant to be a historical quote. I was just frustrated and needed my assistant.
Did you ever prank someone?
I suppose the speaking machine was my first prank. I always enjoyed a bit of gentle humor and the surprise of a new discovery.
What was the most outlandish purchase you made?
I bought a massive estate in Nova Scotia. It wasn't just a house, it was a laboratory, a farm, and a sanctuary. To some, it seemed like a lot, but to me, it was the perfect place to think.
What advice would you give people chasing success?
Don't just look at the beaten path. Look at the out-of-the-way things. Great discoveries often happen when you observe the things everyone else ignores. And remember, when one door closes, another opens. But we often look so long and so regretfully upon the closed door that we do not see the one which has opened for us.
Alexander, do you have any closing remarks about this interview or the stories you shared that you would like to share with the listeners before we sign off?
Only that I hope everyone keeps listening, not just to podcasts, but to the world around them. There is so much music in silence and so much to learn from one another. Thank you, Calvin, for this wonderful opportunity to speak again. It has been a true pleasure.
The pleasure was all ours. What a fascinating look into the life of a man who changed the way we all connect. From mama-speaking skulls to the world-changing telephone, Alexander Graham Bell's curiosity knew no bounds. And that wraps up another conversation from Beyond the Grave. Thanks for joining us on the Headstones and Microphones podcast. Remember, legends may die, but their stories never do. Please help spread the word by sharing and following the pod.